everybody, and welcome back to IndieQuest, a celebration of the indie and obscure. Your home for all wonderful video game talk, specifically of the indie variety. I am one of your hosts, Josh. I'm here with my co-host, one of my co-hosts, Captain Drachma. How you doing, man?
I'm doing swell, Josh. Thank you for introducing me, and only me. I don't know why you would be introducing anyone. Do you smell? I smell jank. Do you smell jank?
Wow, thanks so much for having me on as a guest, you guys. It's my honor to be here this one and only time as a guest on your podcast. I appreciate it.
Long time in the runnings here. Like, we've been wanting you on the show. We've been asking and just hounding your DMs. Finally, you're here.
Schedules just didn't line up. It's because you got to go through my new manager. He's not great with communication. He does not really relay my messages or even seem to interpret them. But he calls the shots now. But yes, hello. It's good to talk to you all. Which is me pretending like I haven't been talking to you for the last 10 minutes. But it's good to see you guys.
Yeah. We held it. It was the coldest opening ever. Josh just did a 3, 2, 1 and then went right into it. We didn't talk at all. But
yep.
Yeah, it is amazing.
Absolute silence.
Amazing to see the headband on my screen again and have the Three Musketeers back together. It's a good day.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Good to see you guys. I speak for the entire IndieQuest audience, I'm sure, when I say thanks to the two of you for continuing to crush it in my extended absence. You did great. I would go so far as to say you wouldn't even notice that I was gone. That's how good of a job you guys did. So it's hard to be away. And new dad life, my schedule is still chaotic. I can't always guarantee for the folks out there that every episode I come, I'll be able to bring an indie game every time, or there might be episodes here and there where I do have to miss. But as much as life and fate allows, I'm back and I'm here for you all.
Awesome. Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like, dude, just come when you can. Like, the invitation's always there. Come hang out with us, talk about indie games. Even if you don't have a game, you can just react and be like, wow, your opinions are trash, Seth, stuff like that. So I miss that energy.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is what works so well with the three host thing too. We've talked about that in the past, but sometimes we can rotate out, take a brief hiatus, or have children. It works out still. So, but speaking of having children, Steve, I'm sure our audience, our IndieQuest listeners, want to know, how's that dad life going?
Dude, it's going very good. The first 3 months or so are just pure chaos. Yes. I don't know which way was up. I don't know what was happening. It was just like a blur of trying to feed and get a baby to sleep and waking up at all random hours and watching YouTube on my phone at 3 a.m. while bouncing this baby on my lap, or playing my Switch one-handed while I get this kid to sleep. But now I've been gone a while, you guys. It's been almost 5 months, maybe in terms of episode cadence, more than 5 months. But now everything's in a good rhythm, man, where he's got a schedule now. He's at daycare now. He has a night routine now. So things are, things have normalized in terms of his life quite a bit. And plus he's getting into that phase right now where he's getting curious. He's getting smiley, a lot of big laughs and big gummy grins with his 2 teeth that have come in. And that's good stuff.
Yeah. I remember you talking to Trav about it, I think, on Polykill, and Trav saying, all they do is eat and sleep. That's all they do. It'll be really easy. You'll get a lot of gaming in. And I was like, that was not my experience
I will
at
say,
all.
For anyone else that has heard that is the biggest propaganda I've ever heard. I would say that those first 3 months that my son was born were some of the most chaotic and unpredictable of my life. And I fully acknowledge a good part of that is my own fault. A good part of it is you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know,
right?
Is he hungry? Is he sleepy? You don't know how long they should be awake before you should give him a nap, how often you should feed them. Does this kid need to burp? How much burping is enough burping?
Yes,
it's
right.
You have to figure all that out. And obnoxiously, not to turn this into a parenting podcast, but obnoxiously, it is all specific to the baby. So ahead of having the kid, I asked everyone, I was like, give me your hot parenting advice. And like 99% of people said, oh, you'll figure it out. You know, it's all just, you kind of learn on the fly. And it's like, I remember being like, that is worthless advice. That is a cop out. But it is true. Like, your kid is going to be your kid, and he's going to have all of his or her particularities and moods and preferences. And you just have to mess it up enough times to finally figure out what works.
My sons are almost 12, right? And even up until this point, I'm not sure if I make the right decisions all the time in the way I'm parenting, right? It's just that's how it goes. You go off of whatever you've experienced in life, and that's kind of what you're trying to pass down. You're trying to do the right thing. But I still think about, I remember I had a conversation with my dad probably around the time my son was born, and we had a deep conversation, which honestly, Dad's a great guy, but the amount of deep conversations I've had with my dad, I can probably count on one hand.
Mm-hmm.
He's that's just the way he is. But I remember him saying, like, hey man, I don't know that I've always made the right decisions. I have just done my best. And if you do your best, it's going to be fine. Yeah. And I've always thought about that. Like, there is no preferred way of parenting. There is no exactly correct way to do things. You're going to learn as you go, and eventually you're going to be like, oh yeah, that wasn't too bad. So, yeah.
Yep. All we can do is, most of us try to avoid the mistakes that we perceived our parents to have made, and in doing so, we'll make our own unique mistakes
Exactly.
that they didn't make, and it just goes and goes.
I just absolutely do not want to create another Steve. That would be terrible. I'm doing everything.
The world can barely handle the one.
Yeah. Funny.
The question I have is he really into headbands yet? Have you got him there yet? Or is he too young for the headbands?
Too young. Every now and again, I've taken mine and I've sort of double looped it over and I've put it on his head, but he's not super into him yet. For the first couple months, he was nothing on my head at all, and now I think it's mostly just that he's a baby and doesn't understand what a headband is. So he'll get there, or he'll definitely not get there because you don't want to, have the same fashion sense as your parents. So,
right.
Except for boots, of course. A rocking pair of boots is generationally appropriate at all ages.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Neither of my kids want anything to do with boots, or they like to go to my dad's and hang out on the farm, but they are not. Maybe as they get older, they'll be more country oriented or whatever you want to call that type of lifestyle. But as of right now, they are happy living in a small town and being able to embrace that. Not so much the farm life, but you can't win them all. But anyway.
Well, it's been a few months. What you been playing? I know you talk on Polykill. If you guys listen to Polykill, so you know kind of what Steve's been playing if you listen to that podcast. But what about the people who don't listen to Polykill? What kind of games are you playing? AAA, indie, or otherwise lately?
It's true. I've been playing a lot. Honestly, I've been playing mostly AAA and retro. But before I bring my pick, I just want to come on here and say again on an indie podcast, let me talk about a AAA RPG from the 90s. Grandia is amazing if you have a kid. That's all I need to say, okay? Grandia helps you a lot in the first month or two of your child's life. But no, I'm playing a lot of stuff. I'm playing some indie stuff too. And usually in the past, I would try to save my IndieQuest pick for a dramatic reveal. Aha! You never saw this one coming. Every now and again, I'd bring it to Polykill, but I tried to keep, my Polykill and my IndieQuest two separate relationships, no overlap there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not possible these days. So if you're a listener of both, you'll probably hear some cross pollination, but we keep different takes for different podcasts, so don't you worry. But I have a game. I brought a game to IndieQuest. Should I speak of this game? Should I?
Yeah.
Should I
speak of it?
Now, actually, I'm curious. I don't know if you guys can think of this off the top of your head, and if you can't, don't even have to pretend. But you have listened to Polykill, I assume. And so you've heard what I've talked about in the last few months. If you were to guess amongst the indie games I've brought to Polykill what I would bring today, Do you have any off the dome that I would talk about?
I have a thought, but I'll let Josh chime in first if he has something.
What's the name of that new 3D platforming game?
Yeah, that was.
What's the
that
name
was
of
my
it? It
thought.
starts with a P, right?
It's a silent P.
Pseudoregalia. That's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, that one.
Was that what you're thinking too, Seth?
That is what I was thinking.
Folks, I'm going to talk about pseudoregalia today. Right?
Okay.
This
is a
game
very
needs to be
Steve game.
discussed. See, I knew
Yes.
you guys would know me. All right, you've got my back. So, pseudoregalia is it's a gated exploration action adventure platformer. It's kind of all those things in one. It's developed by a individual named Ritzler, which I strategically don't know the gender of, so they're just an individual. I think it's only available on Steam. Like, I don't think it's available on any consoles or any other platforms. And it came out July 28th, 2023, so it is a 2023 game. The best way I can describe this game is, imagine that Castlevania 64 from the Nintendo 64 had the sick movement of Super Mario 64 and a DeviantArt main character. Like, those things combined down into one are what you get. So, a kind of like broad overview gameplay here. It is very much a gated exploration, and I specifically say Castlevania 64 because this game is definitely going for at least some of a Castlevania vibe, at least insofar as the game is about exploring a castle. So you are sort of just like cold dropped into this world. It's an open castle to explore. It's 3D environments. You can jump on ledges and shimmy and, navigate all these different hallways and obstacles and things like that. And the spaces that you're in are mostly like, this sounds negative, but it's not. They're mostly empty. Like there's not a lot of like clutter or like visual noise or environmental like outcroppings and things. It's kind of like in the same way that a Nintendo 64 game would be. It's sort of like straight halls, plain open rooms, and only the bare necessities that you need to navigate through those rooms. Still,
I watched some of your stream, and so many of these indie games that come out nowadays, and Josh will probably make fun of me for this, but they are trying to have a retro styling, but they're too good, too pretty, too all of that stuff to be able to really imagine that they could have ran on 90s tech. Whereas this game looks like it could be ported to an N64 cart. Yeah. And it would work.
100%. The only thing it's missing is the fog. But like if you added fog in, there's almost nothing about this that you would not believe is functional on an actual running Nintendo 64. So you are exploring these kind of like open rooms and areas, and you're either going to be doing like movement-based puzzles, or you're going to be doing some combat. The movement-based puzzles they start out relatively simple because you start out, I don't even know, you might not even be able to jump at the beginning. I think you can. But you unlock a lot of movement tech as you go through the game, both common and uncommon. So like, I don't know that this is a spoiler. If you're hypersensitive to spoilers, I'm sorry, but like you will get a double jump in this game. You will get the ability to slide along the ground in this game. I won't talk about some of the other more unique movement abilities, but like one can reasonably expect in a gated exploration game at some point you will learn to double jump. Yes. And that's very much the case here. What's cool about the movement tech in this game is that it seems to be designed, it's almost like the 3D platforming action adventure equivalent of like a fighting game, like a Street Fighter, where it's very clearly designed for all of your moves to be kind of like strung together and like comboed and like pieced into one larger move. So, the Super Mario 64 comparison is apt, where if you've ever seen like a speedrun of Super Mario 64, they're like triple jumping into a wall jump, into like a dive, into a somersault, and it all just looks like this one continuous string of actions. That's what this game is like. Or like the classic Mario Odyssey of like, you jump, you long jump, you throw your cap, you dive at your cap, you bounce off your cap, and you get a bunch of extra movement. It's all that type of stuff involving, like wall jumps and and all sorts of just like crazy movement mechanics. So you end up feeling cool as you like punch all these in. Like a lot of times you navigate from one end of an area to another and you're like, oh yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
That was me.
For me, and I know I enjoy a challenge at times, but does it feel overwhelming to have to do that to get to a further part in the level? Or is that like you're able to, and that it's cool that you have that freedom, but you don't have to do that to progress?
I would say it's more the latter. I generally got the sense that it's like, you can play this straight, or you can get real creative and kind of like play, push against the boundaries a little bit and see if you can't get there a little early.
Cool. Yeah.
And I have I very much, for anyone that has ever stopped by the stream and watched me stream, I have that like mentality about me where I like to jam myself into the crease of a wall and see can I jimmy my way out of bounds? Can I I'll get to some sort of blockade in a game, and my first thought is almost never oh, I wonder what the game wants me to do. My first thought is always is there a way for me to jump on top of this character's head and squeak my way around? I just like trying to beat the game at its own game. And this is a game where it was designed for you to do that. Very much so.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's super, super good. So, and it all feels great to do. Navigation is a treat. It is why you're playing this game, honestly. That's the other thing that maybe breaks the N64 design sensibilities is your character animates incredibly smoothly and very stylishly in a way that is maybe beyond the capabilities of the N64. I'm not too sure. You could probably dial back some of the flashiness, but either way. And then there is combat. So combat is relatively straightforward. It's mostly a 3-hit combo affair. There's some smaller enemies, and then there's some larger enemies, and there's a couple of bosses. I would say that the larger enemies and the bosses have a little bit of a Souls energy to them, or maybe I'm recording a podcast. I'm forgetting their name. What are the names of the armor suited enemies in Ocarina of Time that you have to slash 20 times?
Gun Nut, or I say Gun Nut because that's what's from Gungeon, which Gungeon has a lot of rip off of Zelda. But I think I know what you're talking about.
You know who we're talking about? There's some enemies that are very similar in design and feel to that type of enemy, and some you do some dodging and stuff in the way that you in the Souls game. It's not a Souls-like in any way, but that is sort of the vibe I get a little bit. And then in addition to that, sort of 3-hit combo that you have, you also, as you attack, you build up a meter, and the more hits that you land without taking any damage, you'll fill this meter up. And as the meter fills up, there's 3 tiers to it. And in each tier, you'll get increasing benefits for combat. So at some point, I forget which one is which, but at 2 notches, it'll increase your range. So your attacks have this little sort of extra ranged swoosh on them, so you can stand a little further away. At 3, you'll do twice the damage that you would otherwise do.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you can trade out that meter to heal yourself up. So it's very similar to Hollow Knight and it's Soul Meter, where at any point you can stop, you can hold the button, your character will pray on their weapon, and if you don't get hit or knocked out of that for a second and a half or 2 seconds, you'll heal and that meter will drop back down. And so you'll lose the benefits that you had, but you'll be healed back, and you heal more depending on more of the meter that you filled up. Realistically, the combat is not the focus of this game. There are little fodder enemies, but I think to my memory there was only 3 bosses, and it was really 2. There's a last boss, and then there's 1 or 2 otherwise, but you're not doing a lot of combat. You are maybe attacking enemies because they're inconvenient or because you want to fill that meter, but you never combat is almost never the thing that you're stopping and having to do in this room.
Did you feel like the combat was even necessary? Do you think the game would have been fine without it? Do you think it was invasive in a way where you would have rather the combat not been there at all?
I'm going to say no. I'm fine that the combat was there, partially because, and I won't give any of the details away, but combat does play into your movement mechanics in some ways later. And also, I did like the final boss. I like, even if it was sort of like separate in like vibe to what the rest of the game had been, I liked like a big final boss dodging a bunch of attacks and doing combos and stuff. So I would say that it's in service of the game, but mostly is not the part that you're gonna think about. So very cool game. And other things I can mention, the music, again, if you imagine Castlevania 64, you'll understand the soundtrack. It's very catchy, very like high energy, and also like just a little ominous, or like just a little bit sinister. Like a lot of minor keys, but very like toe tappy melodies at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It is a soundtrack that was good enough for me when I was showering the other day to want to pull up Spotify and see if it was on there and listen to it while I showered. So,
nice.
It gets the shower bump.
There you go.
Very catchy. I think it was composed by someone called Potato Tedo. I'm not 100% sure though. They might just have uploaded it to Bandcamp, but I think that they composed it.
Cool.
But it's good. It's definitely like it's catchy as you're listening to it. There's enough variety each area, because you'll go into like the courtyard, the main atrium, the hall, the great hall, stuff like that. And they all have their own sound, their own vibe, and they feel unique but all sort of cohesive to the larger whole.
Mm-hmm.
So there is like a big caveat to everything that we've been talking about here, that this is a gated exploration game with no map. So like you yourself have to like decide whether or not that will bother you. There is no real way in the game to orient yourself to where you need to go. And that can be tricky at times because, again, maybe this is a spoiler if depending on your sensitivity to spoiler, but at like the 2/3 of the way through the game point, you've built up a nice arsenal of a nice kit of moves and things. You reach a point where they're like, you need to get the MacGuffin from these 5 areas. Like, these are areas you've explored, but now you have the capability to go deeper, to go harder, to go stronger, to go better, faster, stronger. Mm-hmm. And so you have to kind of like, retraverse some of these. And if you weren't paying attention, like, you might not remember how to get back to that area. You might not remember even what that area's name was. So when they say like, this is in the theater, you might not even remember what the theater was. So it can be a bit of a hang up here.
I will chime in and say that personally, and Josh, you can pitch in your opinion on this as well, but
yeah,
one of the best, if not the best, gated exploration game of all time, Death's Door, also does not have a map.
Yeah.
And our buddy Ross beat it recently, and I talked to him a little bit about it. I think that was one of his major complaints, is the no map. And I think that's what a lot of people say. I don't remember where I was, and there's no map in Death's Door, but I don't know if I just never really paid attention, but that was never a big gripe for me. So I don't know if I would hate that necessarily about this game, other than the fact that it tells you go back to these specific places. I don't remember Death's Door ever really doing that and saying you need to traverse back to where you fought the first boss and you're 5 hours past that. I don't think it really does that. So.
No, the thing about that game is like the doors themselves will actually be labeled very specifically. So I feel like they lead you in the right way. So I can see not really knowing, like you said, the theater of like, where the hell is the theater? I think it's like 3 rooms back that way. And then you're just kind of like wandering, trying to figure it out. That could be frustrating. Did that bother you though? Throughout the course of the game, or did you figure it out?
I'll speak to my experience. The re-navigation wasn't a problem for me, but that's because I'll just be upfront. At that point, I had a map up. Enterprising individuals online have made maps, and I made the executive call, like, I will be better off with a map to go look stuff up. And specifically, that's because where like a power up is hidden in this game is not always like obvious in the way that you'd expect like a typical game to do it. So like, a lot of times you think in a gated exploration game, you'd like push deep into an area, you'd get to a boss fight, you'd beat that boss, and then you'd get the power up and you'd be like, oh, hell yeah, now I can get through green doors. And your brain would go, oh, I know all the green doors that I never went through. Let's go back and hit those. In this one, it's like halfway through exploring into an area, there will be like an offshoot, a path that you could just have missed that seems like it would hide like a health power up or something. And there will just be like a critical like movement ability hidden there. And the game doesn't always stop you from like getting to a situation where you need an ability that you don't have. So I don't remember if you guys were there at this point in the stream, but for those that were watching my stream of this game, I got like deep into this underground cavern, and there was this puzzle that involved this like hanging cage, and you're like navigating up multiple floors, like hitting all these levers to like raise this cage so you can get something at the very top of it. You can do that entire puzzle, like hit like 15 levers, get to the very top, and you're like a character height and a half short of being able to make the last jump. And it's just because I was missing a like height enhancing movement ability that I didn't have, and I either didn't need to get to that area, or my creativity backfired, and maybe they thought I needed it to get to that area, but I like janked my way in,
broke it,
I had no idea to that point that I was missing something. And so I was in that position where I was like, I don't know, am I missing something in this puzzle, or am I missing like movement tech? I don't know. And that was the point where I was like, it's like a 15-minute journey back to where I came from, because there's not like fast travel or anything, like you're navigating around. So I was like, I got to just look up a map of like where this ability is. I saw where it was, and I was like, okay. Actually, I looked up a playthrough of it online to watch someone do that puzzle to see what they did. And I was like, I can't do that. That's not a move I can do. And so then I had to look up the map to see that. So you can, you can get yourself trapped for what feels like no fault of your own. And you can, everyone out there can have their own opinion on if that's me being coddled by modern game design, always holding your hand and making sure that you're doing the right thing, or, this is a very small game by a largely individual dev that probably didn't have the opportunity to get like as rigorously QA tested and like betaed as they would like. And so some of these things that are kind of painful, you just couldn't hammer out or like find solutions for. So.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it, and now that Josh mentioned the door thing in Death's Door, I feel like in a game like this, if there was some form of fast travel or a main hub area, that would be much easier to maneuver around, right? I mean, you don't even necessarily need a map, but if you can get back and get to your different areas quickly, then you can at least search through that stuff in minimal amount of time, rather than literally running everywhere and just kind of smacking your head against the wall and like, oh, finally I found it. Or you look at a game facts, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah. And one other like movement thing I didn't mention, or like navigation thing, is this game has Zelda style doors with locks on them where you need small silver keys to open them. And like the first original Zelda game, the keys are not unique or specific to the area that the door is in. There's just, 15 of these doors in the world, and there's 15 of these keys in the world. So depending on like which keys you find in the order you open doors, you might like need a key for a door in this area, but you've already like used all the keys that you've gotten in this area. And you might need to like journey back to find a key somewhere else just to bring here. So navigation in general can be complicated. I would personally encourage anyone out there, unless you're like a hardcore, I never use guides, or you're like a hardcore, like I like to throw my head against the wall, play until you feel like you're getting stuck, and then use a map occasionally just to orient yourself.
Honestly, the game itself just feels like a retro game from all aspects, even that.
Yes.
Like, I feel like a lot of retro games are like, that's a retro game. You're just smacking your head against the wall trying to figure it out.
Yep.
And it even hits that nail on the head there. One comment I want to make is this was a weird. I played this game a little bit. I think I played like less than an hour of it, like just kind of dip my toes just to see what it is, because people were talking about it, and right at the same time I started replaying Ape Escape, and I know this is like so weird to say, but the level design reminded me of Ape Escape. Is that weird to say?
No, I
like
don't
that.
think so. Yeah, it's because it is that like early PS1 N64 like simple geometric problem solving, right?
Yeah, and then like a lot of the platforming challenges, quote, in Ape Escape are kind of simple because of the way that it controls. But anyway, it's like clever in a lot of weird ways, and it's like I can recognize that in that game. It's like a modern version of that idea, that design philosophy, I guess, right? So it was just a weird thing that line I drew in my head because it just so happened to be playing Ape Escape at the same time. So yeah,
that makes sense. 100% agree with that. And yeah, okay, before I get to my conclusion, any other final questions, curiosities? What else do you want to know?
I think it's amazing that this game is $6.
Yeah.
Unreasonably cheap and extremely cool. I will say, I don't think there's anyone out there that only plays main or side quest games. Before we talk about this game at all, either direction, from what we've said so far, I hope you've already bought it. Like, don't even wishlist it. It's $6. Like, just skip one of your items at Taco Bell today and buy this game. It will satiate you. It'll fill your belly.
It reminds me of, I think you were not here for this one, Steve, but when I brought Bloody Hell, and Bloody Hell is for some reason free.
Yeah.
It's like,
why? What is going on?
It's an actual decent game.
Yeah, it's really good for a free game. And honestly, would be a really good game as a $10 game even, right? Like,
right.
And just the amount of time, this is a fully 3D game. The amount of time this had to have taken to make to only be $6. The value versus time spent making it doesn't make sense to me. But they have almost 3,000 overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam. So I guess they're doing a good job with their pricing. So
I'm honestly, maybe like half of those are probably people that are just thirsty for the main character because, like Steve said, it's a DDR character. So.
It is a bunny girl, and she has a full set of mashed potatoes in that bowl. Okay? No two ways about it. All right, so let's get down to the classifications. I think this one ultimately lands as like one of the sickest side quest picks that I can offer. Like I want this game so bad to be on the main quest because I want to give it that kudos, but I can't deny that the lack of a map and the lack of sort of signposting and stuff, I almost didn't keep playing it. Like after that stream and where I got stuck, I was like, I could just be done now. Thankfully I did revisit it, and I got my second wind, figured out what I need to do, and I beat it, and I really liked my time with it. But I think it would not surprise me to learn of a lot of other people running into similar issues. And there is also kind of the caveat of like, you maybe will get more out of this game if you do have some N64 era nostalgia, right? Like if you're a younger person, like you're someone in your 20s at this point or late teens, and N64 was like in the past, like you grew up on the Wii and later, this game may feel a little empty and a little basic to you in some ways. So if I could include the community made maps, and I really put my thumb on the scale a little bit, I would main quest it, but I'm going to call this one a banger of a side quest and a huge recommendation all the same.
I think we've been saying games like this are like, it's a main quest to me type of games, and I think that's something we've been saying more often. Like I said that for, what was the recent one? Sledge Life 2. To me, that was a main quest game. Yeah. I loved it, and I thought it was an improvement on the first. And, to me, that's a main quest, but to the general audience that listens here, it's probably a side quest, So.
I would 100%. Like when I get to the end of the year and I do my top 10, like I don't know where it'll be, but like it'd be very reasonable for it to be like in the top 5. Like there's no denying that when I streamed it, everyone was like, that's a Steve ass game right there. Yeah. Like everyone showed up and they're like, I'm not surprised he's playing whatever this is. Like
So
Okay.
if you guys are into Steve Ass games, it's going to be probably a main quest to you, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Last question, and we usually try to ask this, and maybe you mentioned it, Steve, and I'm so sorry if you did. How long did it take after that stream? How long did it take in general to beat it?
I would say it's about 6-ish hours. A little more if you want to find everything. I didn't find all of it. Maybe a little less if you go right to the map and you like don't get lost in the way that I did.
Right.
But I'd say 4 to 8 reasonably, which for $6 and like a well-made game, it's incredible. Again, I know sometimes we don't always do this. It's usually in the description of the podcast and stuff, but just to round it out at the end here, the name of the game was Pseudoregalia, if you missed that right up top.
Yeah, so with a silent P, so it's a weirdly spelled game. So if you're curious on how it spells, the description's there. Just go find it. But yeah, awesome. Well, that was your pick. I actually really like that pick. I think that game is kind of fallen under the radar. It had its moment for like a couple days, I feel like, or like a week. Where you're like, oh yeah, you should check this out. And then there's so many games this year that people just kind of, all right, next one, let's move on. So I'm glad you shined a light on that. Shined a light on that one. So.
Yeah,
awesome.
I'd like to repoint some people towards. I know now's the worst time ever in like gaming to be recommending a game to someone where you're like, oh, don't play Baldur's Gate or Starfield or Bomb Rush Cyberpunk or any of these, Sea of Stars. Don't play any of these games.
Sea of Stars.
Go play this one that you never heard of, but you should probably go play Pseudoregalia before the end of the year.
Awesome. So Cap, you want to go first, or you want me to, or second? I mean.
I'll go, Josh. I'll go right now, I suppose.
Okay.
And we'll round it out with the frantic one and only.
Okay,
all
sounds
right.
good.
So, I also played a 2023 indie. And for everyone out there listening, expect a decent amount of 2023 indies from me over the next couple of weeks / months, because I'm trying. I would love to get to at least 10, so I could have a top 10, right? At least something I write down and whatever. But
it's a good goal.
All right.
I like that goal.
10 indies from the same year that we're in, right? Yeah. So, all right. I played a game that both of you have probably heard of, I would imagine, and probably a lot of the audience has heard of it as well. And that is Planet of Lana.
Oh, I'm very curious to hear about this one.
Yeah.
I've been, I would say, orbiting around this game for a little while now, and I want to hear how much I should prioritize that.
I know it's beautiful, so that's the main thing I know about it.
It is absolutely stunning, and honestly, I don't ever Google my own game when I'm talking about it, but today I'm going to, just to reference the images, any images I can, so that I can make sure I emphasize just how good this game looks when I get to that point.
Holy crap, man.
It is absolutely something, for sure. But Planet of Lana came out this year, May 23rd. The dev was Wishfully, which is a Swedish indie studio, small team. It did get published by a fairly large publisher. I didn't write that down, but it is a decently sized publisher. But this is the only game that Wishfully has ever made.
Yeah,
so
it's Thunderful Publishing. They do a lot of just like indies like this that are just beautiful, and they're just help promote them and make them a little bit more seen in the public eye. Like they probably got them on Game Pass because this is like one of the Game Pass staples this year. So yeah, awesome.
They published Curse to Golf. They published Viewfinder on PC. So stuff people have heard of.
Awesome. So, I'm so happy you brought up Game Pass, Josh, because I was about to mention that. It is on PC, which is where I played it. I play, I would say, 90% of my indies on PC. The other 10% on Switch, PS4. But it is on Game Pass, which is, no matter what, you should go check out Planet of Lana. If you have the Game Pass service, I'm just going to say it now. It's going to be a little bit before we get to main or side quest. Go get it on Game Pass if you have it. Check it out, at least for a little bit, to be able to look at those amazing colors and hear some amazing tunes. But, overview of Planet of Lana. It is a cinematic puzzle platform adventure. I've seen comparisons. I have not played either of these, which I know is sinful of a person who is an indie game trying to be an aficionado of indie games and on an indie game podcast, I have not played either Inside or Limbo. But this
so
game
you're saying you've never finished Inside before?
I have. Well,
I finished in Limbo before.
I have not played either of those games, and I need to remedy that. I can't remember. I should have looked at the quest log. Do you remember if either of you have brought those games to the quest log?
No, we haven't.
I don't think so. It's in like that small handful of games that I feel like is my break glass in case of emergency. Like if I ever really need to whip one out, I got Limbo and Inside in my back pocket.
Well, then I just need to beat you to the punch there. But yeah, those are also amazing games, very well reviewed. And we're kind of, from my understanding, the first indie type games that really hit the public eye that were kind of like this style. But I always think of Out of This World, right? Out of This World is this type of game. So it is like those games, but as we've already mentioned, the colors just jump off the screen. That's where it really sets itself apart from Inside and Limbo, is the color scheme, the backgrounds. I saw someone compare it when I was reading through a couple Steam reviews. Someone said it's like those games, but if they were in Studio Ghibli worlds. And that's pretty spot on, honestly.
Nice.
I mean, of the 20 or so images that show up in a Google search, any one of these could comfortably be my desktop wallpaper.
Yes. It would be great for any photo mode. No matter where you're going, the background is always amazing. And I will also mention, we'll get to it a little bit, it's not always just greenery, organic background. It changes. It throws you for a loop. And I'm going to do my best not to spoil anything, but don't spoil yourself by looking up as many images as you can before playing. Just play it and let it all just come to you.
I literally just, as you said that, I closed the tab in fear. I was like, okay.
Yeah, because this game goes places that I didn't expect, and maybe other people knew some of the things that were supposed to be happening, but I tried to stay as spoiler-free as possible going into this game, and it really benefited the game a lot doing that.
I was going to ask, how long is this game? Is it similar in length to like Limbo and Inside, like a few hours long, 3 or 4 hours, or?
It took me about 4.
Okay.
And honestly, if you were beelining it and didn't want to try to do any extra stuff, you could probably do it closer to 3.5, I would guess. So, but I think you could also, I did not get all achievements, and I'll say it right now, I haven't even gotten to gameplay. One of the achievements is never die. And that sounds absolutely terrible. Yeah.
What is it about these types of games? Limbo, I think, kind of famously has an achievement to die. I think not at all. Or maybe it's less than 5 times, but it's like, they love to just demand perfection out of you across the entire game. It's so weird.
It makes what is a very fun experience into what I would imagine would be incredibly stressful. Because I'm going to get into gameplay right now. You die pretty often. You're dying. You're out here dying. I mean, you would have to, I feel like you would almost have to follow a guide and just be so intensely careful to get that achievement. So anyway, on with the gameplay. You play as a girl named Lana. It is what I like to call an intentional platforming or methodical platforming experience. Like those other games we've already mentioned, when you go to jump, you fully extend your arms and grab onto the cliff ledge, right? Mm-hmm. And you pull yourself up. So it's Soulsian with how Souls combat is very intentional. Mm-hmm. You swing your sword and there's weight to it. This is not a Mario platformer where it doesn't seem like Mario has knees. He just springs, right?
Right.
Lana has maybe more joints than we do, right? That's how it feels. So yeah, you're grabbing ledges, you're pulling yourself up slowly, you're jogging, like there's never a sprint button. Something, Josh, for you, I kept doing is trying to sprint like you can with Atma and a Space Unbound. I'm like, I'm pressing B and it's doing nothing.
Yeah,
like,
just like a any old, like we all play platformers, so just holding the B button as
Yes.
you're resting your hand on the B button as you're playing, right? You know, that's what you're expecting to be able to do.
But honestly, it really works for this game. It doesn't make sense to make her go faster because first of all, she's, you know, probably a mid-teen girl, I would assume 13, 14, 15-ish age. So why should she sprint for the entire 5 hours? You should be running at her pace because you're taking in not half of it, but a good third of the game is just taking in the backgrounds and the scenery. That's part of it. And it makes you embrace what's going on around you by slowing her down a little bit. It makes so much sense. And maybe that wasn't the point, but it works that way for me. You can duck and crawl under things, hide in the grass from enemies. And speaking of enemies, there are several enemies, and this will get us to kind of a story spoiler, but we're going to have to do it. I'm just going to have to do it now. I was going to talk about it later. It doesn't make sense to, though. Lana has a sister named Elo. And at the very beginning of the game, you're kind of chasing Elo through the forest outside of their small village. And you eventually get to this cliff ledge. And this is like literally very early game, 5 minutes in. Elo gets taken by some sort of mech with a cage on the bottom and flown away. And, you know, as Lana and as the player, you're like, what's going on? You just don't expect that. And that's as much as I really want to get into with that kind of stuff. But you don't expect that because it's such a green, organic, wooden. The villages are all made out of wood. Everything is just so bound up to the earth that you don't realize that it's going to be that. There's going to be futuristic tech involved in the game. So it surprised me. That is kind of how everything gets started off. And as you go through the game, you see some different mechs that are going to try to zap you, I will say. You're not entirely sure what they're exactly trying to do at the time. And then there are also what I would call beasts that are of the planet that you're moving around on. So there are two types of enemies. In general, they serve the same purpose. If they see you, they will run up to you and get you, and then you're dead, right? And you restart that puzzle. Something that I love about this game, every puzzle that you kind of come to is usually about a screen, and it doesn't really move. A lot of times it'll zoom out on that specific screen. You'll have this screen to try to look around and find what you need to do for that puzzle. So with the beasts and with the tech robots getting you sometimes, it will always reset you right at the beginning of that puzzle. And I love that because, you know, then you can just restart. You know exactly what you're doing. Speaking of the puzzles, a huge part of it, you're doing a lot of block pushing, a lot of pressing buttons to activate different kinds of switches and sometimes tech to get you through these. Something that I didn't realize, maybe I just didn't pay any attention to what Planet of Lana was actually about going into it. You get a companion named Mui pretty early on. So it's slight spoiler, but you get Mui pretty early on. It's like a monkey cat, basically. Right. It has the mannerisms of a cat. It does a lot of things like a cat would, but it has a curled up tail and moves around like a monkey. So that's why I think of it as like a mix between a cat and a monkey. But the cool thing about solving puzzles is you can move Lana to solve puzzles, to push the blocks, to grab different rafts and stuff like that in the water. But Mui can be moved separately of Lana. So Lana can actually tell Mui to go to a specific place that she can't get to because Mui can climb up taller ledges. Mui can jump wider gaps. But then also Mui doesn't like water, right? And there's things like that where Lana can do certain things that Mui can't. Mui can do certain things that Lana can't. So you have to, that's another portion of the puzzle solving. And I will say, without spoiling too much, there are certain times when you have to be moving Lana and giving Muya commands. So you're kind of crossing over each other to try to do different things. So it kind of it messes with your brain a little bit for certain puzzles because you're kind of have your hands on buttons that you're not used to doing. You're almost trying to straddle 2 buttons at a time to get things to happen. So I think that you guys have any questions about gameplay? I think that pretty much covers the bases. There is no combat. You cannot fight back. You have to hide.
I'm just generally curious how taxing are the puzzles? Because a lot of times a game like this, it can vary a little bit, but I feel like they tend to skew pretty easy because they kind of like mostly just want you to vibe with the ride. Is that the case here, or do they get pretty tough to work out?
So I haven't played a lot of these kinds of games, but I did play Voyage. I talked about Voyage on IQ, which is a 2-player version of this type of game, right? And the puzzles in those games, in that game specifically, was ridiculous. They were ridiculously easy to the point where it's like, oh, there's that thing right there. I just need to go push it. And then that's it. Planet of Lana is several steps above that. I would not call the puzzles difficult, but they are clever enough that when you solve them, you feel good about it. It's not just like, oh, this is an obstacle. This is the most mundane thing. I just want to get to the next part of the game. Every puzzle is really fun. I thought they were very fun. You're not going to sit there and stare at the screen for an hour to figure any puzzle out, but they suit the game very well, not overly challenging, and make you feel good about completing them.
All right. I'm here for it.
Last little bit of gameplay before we move on to the presentation, which we've already talked about a lot, but there are also, I was very surprised by this. I've never, and maybe some of these games do this, but there's a little weird gated explorationness in this game. You cannot backtrack necessarily, but there are hidden collectibles in a game like this, which I thought was really weird. There are 10 shrines that you have to try to find and uncover, and that they only serve a purpose to get you to be able to fill in this like puzzle sheet, and they're tied to achievements on Steam, and I'm assuming Xbox, right? But being able to find those, I just thought once I stumbled across the first one, I was like, whoa, this is the coolest thing, because I noticed that there was a path going the opposite direction of where I thought I should go. It was going left. I could jump up to this thing. Didn't make sense to get up there, but once I did, I was like, oh, well, I guess let's see what's over here. I'll probably just fall off a cliff and then restart anyway. But no, there was a shrine, and then I got an achievement for it, which meant from that point forward, I was constantly looking for those shrines, and I only uncovered 6 of them. So there are 4 shrines I still haven't found. That's how difficult, even with trying to find them the entire game, I still missed 4. So they are pretty tough to find.
Is there any like fast travel mechanism to get back to areas you've explored to look for more?
Yes, so it's super cool. There are almost chapters. It doesn't tell you that this is chapter 1, chapter 2 as you're playing. But when you go to start a game, you can select something that either says scenes or chapters or something like that, and you can start different sections at the beginning. So I imagine if you're trying to chase those shrines, the thing to do would just be, if you're not worried about spoiling yourself and you want to get the achievements, you could easily look up a guide and it'll just say, go back to this chapter and go here. Right. Okay. So easy enough to chase them, but it is fun finding them organically. Of course. Yeah. And honestly, if you're not going for 100%, then the shrines they're cool to find when you find them. If you're going for 100%, like I already mentioned, you're going to have to get the shrines, so do that. But then you're going to have to play through the entire game without dying. I don't know that you can go to each chapter and just play each chapter without dying. That I would have to look that up. I imagine you have to start a new game and go through the whole thing, which we talked about it a little bit. There are pits everywhere. Lana can drown. Mui and Lana are tied to like the same life, basically. So if Mui dies, then you're dead. You lose. So it's really hard to kind of balance it out. It's not an overly challenging game, but to never die just seems very, very tough obstacle to get over, I suppose. So, all right, on to presentation. We've talked about it. I'm assuming everybody at home has probably looked up at least a screenshot. It's amazing. I'm going to use Josh's word, painterly.
Painterly, there you go.
It is. It's like you're playing in a painting that you would see on the wall at your grandma's house or something. Like my grandma always went to garage sailing and stuff, and she would get random old paintings and hang them up or put them wherever. And this reminds me of something like that, where somebody just decided they were going to paint today, and they watched Bob Ross for a while, and that is Planet of Lana. Honestly, it's the clouds are amazing. Look, everything is the prettiest thing you've ever seen. The reflections are amazing. The water physics are amazing. Like, everything is just, you want to jump into this world and live there despite everything that's actually going on. Maybe you wouldn't want to live there once you know more about what's going on with the story, but it is just
it's a beautiful
gorgeous
wasteland. There you go. I don't know the story at all, obviously.
Right. It makes you feel like this is a well looked after planet type of deal. Like, there's no tech, but then you find out there is, and that's it's such a contrast once you do find out that there's some technological, mechanical stuff going on, because it just doesn't seem like it belongs. And that, without going any further, you find out more about what's going on. Another cool thing about, and I guess this will lead us, unless you guys have any more questions, we've touched on what the game looks like so many times. Mm-hmm. The story, I've already talked about how Lana lost Elo, and that's what you're going to find. That's really all I can say without spoiling anything. This touches on music and sound a little bit, but there is no written dialogue at all. There's no word bubbles, nothing. So everything is kind of inferred, other than they do have voice actors. So the main characters do have voice actors that are speaking as you're moving through the game, but they are speaking in an unknown language. So one of the coolest things about how this works is, because you don't know what they're saying, you rely on the emotion in their tone. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's so good. You can tell when Lana is scared. When there are enemies around, Lana will whisper to Mui rather than just speak a command. So she'll be hushed. It's the way they did it is incredible. I have never, and I know a lot of games do this, but for such a bare bones system of this kind of speaking, they just did an incredible job conveying to the player what the characters are feeling and what Lana is trying to say to the characters around her, rather than just having her speak English. I think it's awesome and incredibly creative. I love that aspect.
Yeah, I see sometimes for, like, when there's characters that don't have a language that you know, that they actually will write on the script, like, this is what she's saying right now, but in the other language. You know what I mean? Right. So it'd be like, hey, you need to be quiet, but they have to speak the other language, obviously. Maybe that's what they did here. That's kind of what it sounds like. I always think voice acting in general is fascinating, because I would never be able to be a voice actor. I don't think I could do it. You know, I don't think I have the range. I just always find, like, how people come to, like, embody characters, especially ones that you don't know what they're saying. Or does it have subtitles? Probably not. It sounds like it's just kind of like you kind of infer from how they're talking.
Yeah, there is no words ever on the screen.
Nice.
Ever. Everything is looks like ancient hieroglyphs whenever you find words, what you perceive to be words. There's nothing that tells you ever, like, this story is never told to you at all. Everything is inferred, but that's where the art style and the voice acting comes into play, and just, it tells you everything you need to know. I know exactly what happened by just playing as Lana the entire time. And I think that's when a dev can make a game that is so good they don't have to tell you anything, they did a pretty good job, I would say. So
the last piece of that puzzle usually tends to be the score. So, I mean, soundtrack wise, how are we doing? What are we talking?
amazing. It's an orchestral score, but so often, each area of a game is going to be, this area seems to need this type of score, right? And that is what is going on in Planet of Lana a lot of the time. But I love what they do with the music, because when something intense is happening on screen, the music is telling you that it's happening. The music is getting your heart rate up. Even when you don't see the thing, you're not sure. You just stumbled into an area with Lana and Mui, and then the music starts to play. It's almost like Jaws. That's what the Jaws theme does, right? It's so basic, but at the same time, it tells you, oh, something bad is about to happen. And that's what music can do, right? We're trained, or we know just the way that our ears work and our brain works, that if we hear something that has a menacing sound, we know something is coming up, right? So, I mean, the music is absolutely gorgeous, beautiful, could be easily listened to separate of the game, but works extremely well with the game as well. So I would recommend headphones, because there's some stereo sound going on, where one headphone will be, your right headphone maybe will be louder than the left because of whatever's coming up on your right side. So it works pretty cool like that. But yeah, I think that will bring me to where I will be placing on the quest log, unless you guys have any other questions.
No, I'm good. Yeah, I have this downloaded on my Xbox. Kind of one of those things where it's on Game Pass, and it's like, I mean to get to it, so maybe this will push me to it once I find out what your verdict is.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm going to play it either way, but yeah, I want to know what your verdict is.
Yeah, exactly.
I went into Planet of Lana. I think we all do this sometimes. As hosts, we will go into a game thinking, this is probably going to be a main quest for me. This is probably going to be a side quest for me. I went into Planet of Lana fully expecting to play a side quest game. I thought this is going to be a fun side quest. Spoiler, I think all three of us are dabbling with the Sea of Stars, right? So, been playing a lot of Sea of Stars lately. I just needed something fairly quick to play on the side, and I've had this downloaded in Steam ever since it was on sale at some point. I bought it, figured I was going to play it. This is not a side quest game. This is a main quest game. And I love when my expectations are low and it just blows it out of the water. I have heard some detractions where some people say the puzzles are a little bit too easy, and I'm glad you asked that question, because maybe, but I didn't go into this game thinking I want an intense puzzler, because that's not what it is. It's about the ambiance that you're experiencing as you're moving through. The puzzles are fun and I enjoyed them, but the story of Lana and moving through the story as her is what it's all about to me. And that's what is getting the main quest. Puzzles certainly added to it. The relationship she builds with Mui, the relationship she has with Elo, it all plays into it. The other reason people give it sort of negative reviews, I think it's pretty well loved, but it is a short game. We've already talked about that. It is also a $20 game if you were to buy it. So it makes sense that it's $20. It's like one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. So, that takes money.
You pay for the quality, right?
Yes. Somebody was working very hard on this game. But it's a short game. So your value to money is not great when it comes to that. But Game Pass means it doesn't matter. If you get Game Pass anyway, you get it for free. So play Planet of Lana. Highly recommended. And I think if you're doing something similar to me, or you're trying to play games that are really good in 2023, Planet of Lana should not be missed.
Awesome.
Beautiful thing, man. You got me jazzed up. Re-jazzed.
Yeah, I this is one I've seen on in trailers a million times when it came out. Downloaded it, and then it just got added to the pile. So knowing that you love it and you give it like the main quest seal of approval makes me want to just like bust it out and play it sooner. So
yeah, sometimes I feel like I've thrown a lot of main quest games on lately, and I'm like, I kind of want to pick a side quest, but sorry, the heart wants what the heart
ain't up
wants.
to you, buddy.
That's right.
That's up to the powers that be.
Yes. But anyway, Josh, time to bring us home.
Okay. Well, I did not bring a game from 2023. It's an older game. This game we could have had all three of us bringing brand new games, but this game is from 2015. It's by a studio called Messhof Games. They make the Nidhogg series. This is the game they made before they made Nidhogg, called Flywrench. And it might be a little bit, if you guys listen to the IQOST episodes, I did bring a song from this game. This game is weird to describe. So I'm going to let our buddy, Mr. Mo, on the Discord, describe it for us.
Yeah,
he says it is a fast, epileptic, buzz wire mini golf comp-like game that makes fun and your brain hurt. And he said I could use that in my review. So
I heard the word mini golf. You got my ears percolating. Let's go.
I would say maybe sort of. This game is pretty much a platformer, kind of, sort of. So you play this little ship. It's a line on the screen. It has the presentation, I would say, loosely is, imagine an Atari game that can move in modern day speed, right? Very simple color palette. It's kind of like greenish. You got like 3 or 4 colors on the screen. Very simple outlined areas that you have to get through. So you play this line. You play a ship. It's the 6802 spacecraft. You're flying through the solar system trying to make it to the sun. You start all the way in Pluto, make your way all the way to the sun, which is obviously the hardest area of the game. There's over 170 stages in this game, and pretty much what the thing is you have a little ship. If you tap one button, you flap upward or downward, and your ship turns red. Or you have another button that makes the ship kind of go down in a downward slant to, like, I guess, like a diagonal southeast, I guess, that direction. Or depending on the way you start getting little nuances of the game. But the main idea is you have a goal at the end of the stage, and the stages are super short, and the whole idea is to get the ship through the same color line. So if you see a red line, you got to have the ship red. If you see a yellow line, you can just go through that. Or you don't push any buttons at all, and you kind of like maneuver your way through the white lines, which is the default color. So it's very simple at first. You're just going to like, okay, point A to point B. You just kind of like fly to the end, fly to the goal easily. Like, oh, okay, I turn yellow, I go through the yellow area. But after a while, the whole thing is you start getting new mechanics added onto it to make each stage a little bit harder. And it's that Super Meat Boy, Celeste, etc. platformer thing where that's where that comes in, where if you fail, you just start the level right over, and it's usually like a 10-second level that you just gotta master. And the whole game is just getting to the next level and learning what this level has to offer and the new mechanics that they throw at you. So I'm sure you guys have pulled this up. What do you think about the art style in this thing? Definitely unique.
It really reminds me of N+, or N++. Like that very, like, again, like 3 or 4 colors max. A lot of just like outlined levels with like simple 45-degree, 90-degree angles, stuff like that. It's, Atari in modern day is not a bad comparison for this, I think.
Yeah, looks like it would have been in like on a 10-in-1 CD for Windows 95.
Yeah, it's got like a little Tempest 2000 energy to it.
Yeah, definitely. Here's from the developer, just so I paint a picture a little bit more for what the game is. They say it's a frenetic action game from the makers of Nidhogg about piloting an aerobatic ship through the depths of space. Each maneuver that you perform, such as flapping like a bird or tumbling like a baton, changes your ship's color. Match a ship's color with a shape to pass through it, hit an obstacle as the wrong color, and fail. The pace is unrelenting, and in a blink, the challenge resets without penalty. So, it's a platformer. This game is one of those, you start playing it, and then you just play the whole game. It's not a very long game. It's like maybe, depending on your skill level, honestly, I would say it can be anywhere from 3 to 6 hours, depending on how good you are at the game. But the later stages are brutal. I'll tell you that much. This also has a level editor in it too, so there's a lot of user-created content for the game. But mostly it's gameplay is key. It's a cheap game. It's $7. Grab it and have a really good gameplay experience. You know, it's just pop in, play a few levels type of thing, or like I did, just binge it all in one day. But man, it's a really fun game that it takes a minute to get used to how it controls, because like, you know, you go into a platform, you kind of know how it's going to control. You're like, oh, okay, I'm going to jump and stuff. In this, it's kind of like, okay, everything has a weight to it and like an intentionality to it that you kind of have to just learn as you play. Like when you first start, you're like, okay, you can kind of, when you turn red, you kind of do the flapping motion, like they said. You can either flap up or kind of like shoot yourself downward to gain momentum, to earn momentum to go back upward as the yellow character, you know, and spiral up and bounce against walls. A lot of times levels will be all yellow all the way around. So if you turn into that little like spirally baton thing, one thing that you do a lot is you'll spiral into the wall, bounce off, and use that momentum to get to a higher part of the stage. And then say there's like 3 red things you got to get through, you boost yourself with the flapping motion, and then you kind of like, you know, tumble your way down into the goal. And then it's just kind of like they just keep remixing this idea. There's scenes and areas where like there's a moving target that you have to like run away from, or there are like spirals that you have to kind of like intricately maneuver through and things like that. So they just keep adding new mechanics and ideas to this very simple formula.
Did you mention what platforms this is on? Is this a cell phone game? It almost looks like it could be. I don't know if they ever brought it to cell phones or not.
According to the wiki page, it's on PlayStation and Steam right now. And that's it.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
But yeah, it's like a 3-button game. It's very simple to play. The thing I do want to touch on here is this thing has like one of the best soundtracks I've experienced in the game. It's like a curated soundtrack list with like a bunch of underground like electronic artists. So it's just like every single song, you're just going to be like, you're not even going to care if you're losing a lot because the tracks are so good.
Right.
I had my music just blasting in my full volume playing this game because that's just the vibe. Like, and you heard one of the songs in the OST episode. That song was already awesome, but just imagine more of that, and you could tell it's just like a bunch of the developers, just like some of their favorite music they just put into like a really awesome OST. And each planet, each planet has different songs, so like each planet will have like a 7 or 8 minute song that plays, and it loops, and you don't even care if it loops because it's just so damn good. So yeah,
Steam agrees with you. The popular user-defined tags in order are action, indie, casual, difficult, and great soundtrack. So
yeah, it's a banger soundtrack. The gameplay, I feel like once you get the feel for the weight of the ship and how each of the very basic attacks and movement patterns work, you just start becoming, you get that feeling like you're a god. Like, you're like, okay, I'm going to try this stage. You might fail like once or twice, but then you go, oh shit, I know what to do now, you know? And it's just like, it's just that instant dopamine hit each level. This is very much, you guys both would love this game, I would think, because it's like, you guys love difficult things that really reward you for like mastering controls, and that's what this game is for sure.
Yeah, what's cool about this game, and other folks might recognize this too, is in looking at it, Flywrench is an unlockable character in Super Meat Boy.
Yes, he is.
Like he's one of like the bonus characters you can play as. So if anybody remembers in Super Meat Boy playing as the little like stick that did like a bird flap, that's this character from an earlier iteration of this game. And I remember in Super Meat Boy that when you got good, that Flywrench was really hard to control, but when you got good with Flywrench, he was like one of the best characters to play as. I think a lot of the speedruns actually used Flywrench because it was like high skill ceiling, high reward.
Yeah.
I feel like this game is kind of in the same camp as Meat Boy, where it was like a Flash game on Newgrounds or something like that, and they just kept working on it over the years, and eventually they released it as a bigger game. So it's pretty much a similar idea as that. That's probably why I didn't put the pieces together that he was in Meat Boy. I remember that unlockable character like later on, and then I like was looking into this game. I was like, oh shit! And it's kind of one of those things where it pieced together in my mind when I figured that out. But anyway, I don't have a lot to say about this game. I'm going to be honest, because it's mostly just mechanics, the game, right? Like You're going to be bouncing across, you're going to be warping through things, and it's just going to be a good time. But I think that just it does what it says it does, and it does it very well. I think that it's frenetic and it's addicting. Like, and I think that a game like this that is can be difficult at times, but you feel like you can conquer the stages and do a good job at it if you try hard enough and you learn the stages. Yeah, it's just very rewarding, and it's not punishing, which I feel like sometimes games like this can be.
Yeah, you were mentioning that it's almost purely mechanics. I'm really bummed out that there's no riveting story about Flywrench finding his long-lost soulmate on Jupiter or something, but, you can't always get that.
There is, like, a loose story, like, each planet. There's kind of like a captain talking to you, like, you need to get to the next planet and stuff. It's a loose story, but obviously that's not why you're here on this game, Like
every shmup story in the 16-bit era, it's always like, get to the next planet, get to the next station. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's cool.
Yeah. But man, I had a blast playing this game, and you guys have any questions about it? Like, I know it's a super simple game to talk about, but anything burning in your mind?
No, again, it is like, if you watch gameplay of it, it seems like it's doing one thing exceedingly well, and it kind of speaks for itself, so I get it.
Right. Yeah. I understand what Mr. Mo was saying about the Quamp comparison, because that's what Quamp does, a similar thing where it's like this game is all about one type of style of gameplay, and it does it well, and it makes sense. Right. So.
Yeah, and the question here is, like, how well does it do it? Does it do it main quest material or side quest material? And honestly, I think that this one was really hard for me because I personally had a blast with this game. I couldn't put it down when I started playing it. I just got addicted. I thought it was so awesome. I stayed up late one night, red-eyed. One thing I want to say is a lot of people say I put stuff on the main quest too easily because I'm so forgiving for games, but I've been trying to be a little more critical. But I think this is a main quest game. Like, honestly, I feel like for going in knowing, if you know what the game is, it's going to be a little more punishing. It's a little more challenging. I think anybody could find fun in this game, though. I think it's that good. Even if you only play like a few stages and then you're like, okay, it gets a little too hard difficult-wise, you're still going to have fun with this game. And you're going to enjoy some great music. Like, if anything, listen to that soundtrack. It's just fire. So,
I mean, it seems awesome, and Steam reviews are good. I did the naughty thing. I started reading the negative reviews on Steam to see what people
I do
that about.
Yeah.
And there's someone in here that says, I got this because I really liked Nidhogg, but it's way too simple to charge. I guess at the time it was $9. I don't know if it still is. They'd say, I'd pay $1, but $9 is outrageous. And on their little profile, it says that at the time they reviewed it, they had played it for like 20 minutes.
Yep.
And now they have played it for 504 hours.
Seriously?
Oh, wow.
So
why would you not go back and change your review? That is so...
I don't know,
Sorry,
man.
pardon my French. That's pretty shitty.
500 hours
Yeah,
for $9 seems like a great value proposition if that's how you like to break your games down.
God.
yeah. I mean,
it
it's
is $7
$7
now. Yeah.
That's not much at all. I feel like you're going to get $7 worth easily from this.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just a nice game to pick up. Like, this is a good in-betweener type of game. It's like, okay, I just got off a big old game. Here's a nice 3 or 4 hour game that's going to get all your gameplay, like, dopamine going. And what's better than that,
Not to belabor that point, but no game should be $1. If you think any game only deserves to cost $1, like, go make your own game and then tell me that I should only pay you $1.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
calm down.
Well, we brought 3 games to the show today. And it's been a little while since we brought 3 games to the show. We did it when we had Burger Champ on as a guest. But besides that, it's just been us 2. So it's nice to have Steve here, have a selection of 3, the trio here. What do we have? So side quest for pseudoregalia, and then 2 main quests. I'm terrible at pronouncing things. Planet of Lana and Flywrench. So I think that's a solid little list of games there. Kind of nice variety, too, I would say.
Yeah. This is usually true in some form, but I will say more than most episodes, I feel like all 3 of these games I'm particularly interested in. Like this feels like selfishly, like a very good episode, a very good list of 3.
Yes, I am. I am not a huge 3D platformer fan, but after watching you play that, Steve, I was like, wow, that looks very fun, very frenetic. And then Flywrench is just it looks like the perfect time waster, and that's what you want sometimes.
Yeah, it's like I was actually, when you brought Downwell pretty recently, I was surprised you put it on SideQuest, because that's pretty much, so that's in my head when I was playing this, and then I finished it up and everything. I was like, this gives Downwell vibes, but I feel like it's more accessible, because Downwell, you'll die pretty quickly.
Roguelike,
yeah. On here, it's like you're actually making progress, and like, okay, and they actually do give you some selection in the stages, like, you have multiple you can pick from, usually like a good list. So it's like if one stage is kind of particularly hard, you can come back to it later, play a couple other ones, stuff like that. So I feel like for people who kind of get frustrated on a stage or an area, or when they die in a roguelike and they have to start over, this isn't going to have that friction. So that was kind of what pushed me over mentally for Main Quest. Anyway. All right. Well, I think that's it for the show today. Let's do some plugs. Steve, where can they find you on the internet?
Right here on the IndieQuest podcast again. Thanks for having me. No.
Woo!
Find me on Twitch and Twitter at Blinkoom. It's OOM. M like Planet of Lana.
Well, Captain, where can they find you on the internet?
Can find me at Captain Drachma on Twitter, and of course can find all three of us in the wonderful place that is the Polymedia Discord. Best place on the internet. Josh, where can they find you?
They can find me somewhere, I'm around.
Washington.
Yeah, Washington, yeah, just start driving around, you'll eventually find me. You can find me at Frantic Society on the old Twitters, and I just recently I mentioned it in the show, I just did a hosting gig over on Cartridge Club for Ape Escape. Literally, as we're doing the recording today, that podcast went live. So if you're interested, we actually had a couple of cool guests, one being from the Polymedia community. We got JJS Voice on there. Voice. So we had a really fun conversation. So if you like some retro games, go check that out. Otherwise, you can find more things from the network, which I just mentioned, on polymedianetwork.com. What's one of those awesome things that they can find on the network? Either one of you guys. You can talk over each other, just figure it out.
I'm going to say Drunk Friend, because that's where you can find friggin' Drachma whenever you want him. You go hang out on Drunk Friend, and he's there.
Whenever.
No, but legitimately, Drunk Friend is a great episode. I particularly enjoyed the Game Boy episode that just released. I'm also a bit of a Game Boy fan, and my boy here, he has the proper respect for the Game Boy Color, which I like to see. So go check out Drunk Friend. Is a top 10 right there.
I will say, Steve, I thought about you during.
Because I always think about you during. So. Leah's like, what's up? And I'm like, I can't get the boots out of my head. I'm sorry.
But especially, everyone should go check it out, because we have to attempt to make a handheld sound better to someone who doesn't like handhelds. And that certain someone happens to be a theoretical enemy of Steve. So I was thinking about that during. I'm like, how would Steve word this? He'd probably just get mad, because it's ridiculous. You should love it, all handhelds, but it is a fun episode.
Yet another terrible take in an unbroken streak of terrible takes from that person.
That's right.
Oh, well, I think you guys should go listen to Polykill, because it's a good show. It's about video games. The most recent one, their top 5 was about villages and towns, hub areas, right? Basically,
yeah.
Yes, it was a good. It's a good one. I enjoyed it. I always enjoy Polykill. I feel like this is weird. Do you guys ever associate a podcast with something you do, in your life?
Oh yeah.
I feel like every time I'm listening to Polykill, it's like I'm doing the most laborious and horrible thing ever at work. So you guys always cheer me up and get me through it. So
that's just the experience of listening is like. If you looked up, you'd realize you're actually just relaxing at the beach. It just feels like hard labor when you're listening to our show.
Yeah, it's just like the day, I literally listened to that episode today, and it was like I had to do this is work stuff, but I had to be in a crawl space for multiple hours today, working, sweating, and being disgusting. And I had you guys in my ear. You guys got me through it, so I appreciate that. You know,
I associate so many of my podcasts with yard work. And
mowing.
Yeah. That's always. If my neighbors probably look over while I'm laughing about something Trav said, like, "What the hell is wrong with that guy?" But anyway,
well, you can find those shows and many more at the polymedianetwork.com. You can send us emails, IndieQuestPod@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at IndieQuestPod. Send us whatever you have on your mind. We'll probably read it on the show. Make it a whole episode, probably, because we just love, listener feedback. You can also find us on Reddit. It's r/Polymedia.
I will say, if we're in the last shout out for emails, Drachma said he's trying to hit 10 indies by the end of the year from 2023. And if pseudoregalia is any example, this more than any other year is the type of year where we're going to miss indies because there's just too many games. So if you have stuff that has already slipped under the radar, or you just feel like it's in the wake of Starfield and Spider-Man and everything else that's coming up, like, let us know what the 2023 indies that are like the must plays are, because we want to make sure we can try to prioritize and schedule them in before we get around to game of the year time.
I'm gonna quickly get ahead of it and be like, I know about Pizza Tower.
I also know about. I want to play that so bad.
Yeah. I assume that's a big one for a lot of people.
Pizza Tower is one that Steve's like, Josh, you should play this. This just has Josh energy, and I'm like, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So, well, anybody, you know what? Steve's here.
Yeah.
How about you give us a nice, heartwarming message for them, or just put our users down, our listeners down, whatever you want to say to close out this episode. Close it out with something nice.
All right. Hey, thanks everyone for waiting for me. I'm sorry that I'm back to lower the average quality of this podcast. But
stop.
I just want to say, shout out to all my new dads out there, and shout out to all my non-dads out there. All right. Much love to you all.
See you.